Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We just give folks a couple minutes more to get logged on here. All right, maybe we'll get started here. And yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second info session about the Minnesota Emerging Developers Fund Program. My name is Koa Mirai. I use she and they pronouns, and I've been at LISC for about 2.5 years now. I'm on the lending team here, and I also co-lead our Developers of Color, which we're now calling Developers of Change Capacity Building Program. I think some of my colleagues are here. I see Arissa and Gretchen and maybe Kate joining too shortly. If you want to say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. So happy to have you with us. We're excited to get this important resource out into the community. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Marissa Ramnarine, and I also work on the lending team with Kate and Koa. I've been at LISC for about 5 years, and I manage 0% project investments and feasibility grants. We're excited to kick this off.
Thanks, Arissa. Kate, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Kate Speed with the LISC Twin Cities team. I'm a director of transformative development on the lending team. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks to all of you. And thanks to everyone who's joining the call today. Most of the material that we're going to cover today is available on our program website. So the grants program page and the loan program page both have PDF links, have links to PDFs with this information and more. So you can go there and refer to that as you're completing your application. I will say, though, that through this process, as we've launched the program, and this is the second info session, we've had a bunch of questions from all of you. So thank you for that. We are putting together a follow-up, like a frequently asked questions kind of a page. So that's going to be additional resources that we will put up on the website early next week so that you all can take a look at that as well as you're compiling your materials for the applications. But mostly the goal today is to give you an overview of the program and talk through what all is needed for the applications and see what questions are coming up for you. We're going to go through the slides quickly so we have some time at the end for questions. As we go through these slides, if you have questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box, and then we can come back to them later. Okay, so for those of you who are not very familiar with us, I'll share a little bit about LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. We are a national nonprofit that's headquartered in New York, and we have 38 offices around the country. Since 1979, we have been meeting the housing and economic development needs of communities across the country. As I think I don't know if I said this already, but we're what's called a CDFI. This stands for Community Development Financial Institution, which is a federal designation, and it's given to financial organizations that lend money to low-income and historically underserved communities. So essentially, we're a bank. You can see that we do all the types of loans that a bank could do, but we are regulated a little bit differently. So we're able to provide more patient capital and kind of customized loans that meet the unique needs of our borrowers. So I'd also say that here in the Twin Cities, most of our loans are in the real estate development arena, and that's really because we have we have a variety of different CDFIs that provide for the lending needs of different sectors in our community. So we at LISC tend to be more in the real estate space, though we can certainly do other loans too. Our office here in the Twin Cities, we just celebrated our 35th anniversary last year. In this time that we've been in operation, we've invested $1 billion towards affordable housing, financial stability, and revitalization of community spaces. And then we focus a lot on the financing pieces, but we also have comprehensive program areas that approach transformative development and recovery work here in the Twin Cities. And really all our programs are guided by what community members want for themselves. So if you'd like to learn more about LISC's programs, our resources, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us on the call here or anybody at LISC, really. Okay, so diving into the actual program now, the Emerging Developers Fund Program. This is the result of a 2023 Minnesota legislation that was approved, that approved $5 million in funding to emerging developers. And LISC was named as the CDFI partner organization. Minnesota DEED is the state agency that is administering and reporting on this program back to the legislators. So we, the grantees and borrowers will report to us. We will report to the state, to DEED, and DEED reports back to the state. So DEED has been our close partner in this work. And then I'll just quickly say that LISC was chosen, I would say, in part because we've been working closely with emerging developers who have strong visions for transformative projects through our financing tools like the Community Asset Transition Fund, and then also our Developers of Change Capacity Building Program. We have been supporting the evolving needs of BIPOC developers with capital, connections, and know-how. So that's a little bit of background about the program. Here you can read on the slide what the purpose of the program is. And you can see essentially it's capital access for emerging developers for projects that are emphasizing economic stability, revitalization of low-income communities, looking at things like economic development, job creation, retention, and building out the capacity of emerging developers. I'll say to folks on my team, if you want to add anything as I go through the slide, if I'm missing any information, please jump in. All right, so we're covering some details here in the next few slides, but like I said, don't worry, all of this information is available on the website. Most of the program criteria are laid out in statute. So for who counts as an emerging developer, you should be able to show either that you have had limited access to loans from traditional banks, or that you are a small developer that's engaged in training programs for real estate development. And then in addition to one of those, you also should be able to show that you are either a woman, a minority, a low-income person, or a person with a disability. So all of these definitions are available online, so you can take a look at that. If more than one of these criteria apply to you, please be sure to mark all of the criteria that apply to you. The statute also describes what eligible projects.
Sorry to interrupt. I
no.
thought it was important to note that this is for for-profit developers, not for nonprofits. So that's
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yes, we've had a lot of people ask that question. The funding is really limited to for-profit developers. So about eligible, projects, you can read these criteria. They're also available online here. The thing to highlight is that the program is open to all types of development projects. So we're looking at housing, commercial, mixed use. And then also just like noting if your project hits more than one of these criteria, make sure to mark all of them that apply to your project. And I think that will speak to the overall strength of your project as well. In both grants and loans in this program will be used to cover pre-development expenses. So just, I won't read through all of this, but these are, according to statute, the list of all the eligible pre-development expenses that you can apply for to cover for your projects, both for grants and for loans. And so if you have just one of these that you want to apply for, that's fine. If there are multiple that you think are going to be applicable for your project, that's totally fine as well. Some additional considerations that we'll be looking at as we review applications. This includes things like site control, whether and how much public or private funding your project has received, whether you're the developer, as a developer, you're able to put in equity, things that make the project stronger and more likely to close on financing. So we're essentially also then going to be looking at the qualifications of the developer. Have you been through any development training programs, whether the project can demonstrate community support and community benefit. While we are going to do some early small stage grants through this program, I just want to share that we will mostly be looking at projects that, this is more so for loans than grants, but definitely for loans, but even for some of the larger grants, we are looking for projects that are making good progress and that are showing that they're kind of on a good path towards being successful. And as I was saying that with the loan program, the repayment of these loans is tied to financing of the project. So we are going to be prioritizing projects that are in that 75 to 80% funded category. It's not a hard and fast rule, but just as a way of noting to applicants that that's what we will be emphasizing on the lending side of the program. And then on that note, just to add that once the loans get repaid to LISC, we have to return the funds back to the state's emerging developer pool. So those funds that we get back, we are not going to be revolving back to new projects. So let's put a pin on that for now. Let's talk first about the about the grant program, and then my colleague Arissa will talk about the loan program. So on the grant program side, of the about $4.2 million that's available in funding for this program, approximately $1.5 million is going towards we're allocating towards grants. So what we're thinking is that we are going to do about 20 grants. The max grant size is 100,000. That's according to statute. So that's what we're capped at. Projects must be within the Twin Cities and the surrounding 7-county metro area. There will be a single solicitation round, and awards will be decided based on a competitive selection process. Eligible expenses must be incurred during the period of the grant contract. So we're not allowed to look back to expenses that were made at an earlier time. And then also disbursements on these grants are going to require things like invoices or receipts, things that indicate that either the expense has already been incurred or that you have to make this, you're obligated to make this expense. So as you're putting together applications, we'll just request that please put down your kind of most current and realistic understanding of how you intend to, how and when you're going to need the money to be applied towards your project. So a little bit more about the process itself. The portal to the grant application went live last Friday, so April 4th. We just want everyone to note that the online application doesn't have a save option. So please, before you sit down to fill out your application, make sure that you go online, look at the PDF. It has all the list of all the questions you're going to need to fill out and all the documentation that you're going to need. So make sure you get everything ready. And then once you sit down, it should go pretty quickly. But that's just a little bit of a tip. And then to note that the cutoff for applications is 5 p.m. on Friday, May 2nd. So there's another 3 weeks for you to compile your applications. Just to give you a little bit of background, we've had over 120 people reach out to us. 120 that I've counted, and then maybe my colleagues have talked to more people as well. And as I mentioned, we're going to probably be able to do about 20 grants. So as you're putting together your packets, try to keep that mind of like, how can you showcase your project's competitive edge? And at any point, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. I know that just acknowledging that putting together these applications can be a lot of work, and you might have questions. So we like to be a resource to you as you're going through that journey. Did I already mention the deadline? Yes, it's May 2nd on Friday by 5 p.m. Now, in terms of what happens next, once all the applications come in, we will begin the review process. Internally, Gretchen, Kate, Ursa, and myself will be the ones reviewing all the applications. We'll kind of we'll kind of like work out, pull together all the eligible applications, and then we will also be engaging a panel of public and private real estate experts, folks who are experienced working with emerging developers. Will bring in their feedback. And we think that this process is going to take about 4 to 6 weeks. It really kind of depends on how many applications we receive. And then once we make the decisions about the awards, the notifications will go out. So just to quickly review the timeline here, applications went live this past Friday. We're doing 2 info sessions this week, so today was the second one. Applicants have about 4 weeks in total to prepare their applications. Deadline is May 2nd. Review will take about 4 to 6 weeks, so we should have notifications out by the middle of June. And then we're going to be working with those who've been selected to complete a grant contract with LISC, so then we can begin making disbursements and the funding. So that whole process is likely to end by somewhere around the middle of July. So as you're thinking about putting your funding packets together, maybe that's just the timing might be relevant to you as you think about when you're going to need the money and how to kind of sequence things, I guess. All right, with that, Ursa, I'll pass it on to you.
Oops, I was muted. I'll go over the loan program. So we have about $2.775 million allocated to loans. These are going to be 0% interest loans with no origination fees. Up to $250,000 is the max that you can apply for. Terms will be between 6 months and 3 years. They will be collateralized by security agreements. There is a possibility of personal guarantees as well on those. And there's also not a prepayment penalty. So we're trying to keep the capital as flexible as we can for recipients. And then for the intake submission process, the online submissions will go live on Monday, April 21st. So next Monday. The intake can only be submitted in one sitting, similar to the grant applications. So there's no option to save and return later. So just having all your documentation and all of that gathered and reading through the website and the PDF will be helpful. So you can complete that all in one sitting. And then, we ask that you compile all the necessary information prior to the intake. And then this, I really want to highlight that there's no deadline for loans, unlike the grants. Applications will be reviewed on a first come, first served rolling basis. And then the selection process, kind of similar to grants, they'll be reviewed by LISC lending staff to determine eligibility. We will follow up with eligible candidates for additional information that we require for underwriting. This can include things like certificate of formation, partnership agreement, certificate of good standing, operating agreements. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we'll be looking for if you get selected. And then also financial history as well. So like tax returns and financial statements. And then once we get all of the documents and we go through the underwriting, the loans will go through a rigorous analysis and review, and that involves LISC staff locally here. So myself, Koa, Kate, and then we have national loan team as well that's going to be reviewing these and helping to execute them. And the timeline for review is about 4 to 6 weeks.
Thanks, Marissa. As I mentioned earlier, we're keeping keeping a record of all the questions that are coming in. So thank you to all of you who are engaging, who are asking questions, who are kind of connecting with us about it. As I mentioned, we're putting these together into an FAQ document, and then we'll kind of have that be available on the website as well. Here's some examples of questions that have come in. Ursa, do you want to read through these questions? Are you up for that?
Yeah, I can read through the questions. These are just kind of like the ones that we got asked the most on the first call that we anticipated people will probably ask on this call. If you have questions that are not covered here, which we anticipate people do, feel free to drop them in the chat and I can read them off. So the first question, are nonprofit CDCs eligible for the funds? No, they are not. The program is intended for emerging for-profit developers. Can we share more guidance on who counts as an emerging developer? So emerging developers, as we highlighted, are those who have developed less than 3 projects. Those are who is eligible for the funding. We had the question, what is considered development? And we consider new construction, significant renovation of an existing property, and or sustainability upgrades, or converting uses as development. Eligible uses for the funds are pre-development expenses. There was a slide earlier on the presentation that listed those out. But if you go to our website, you'll also see them listed out there. There's a number of them. Is funding limited to affordable housing, or are commercial real estate projects also eligible? Funding is available for residential, commercial, and mixed use projects. Are funds only for new developments, or can they be for REA projects? Therefore, pre-development expenses, they can be applied to both new construction and rehab projects. I'll just pause here and say that there's like 3 slides worth of FAQ, just FYI too, so not just the one. So I see some questions coming in the chat that we'll probably get to. Are single family rehabs eligible? They will not be considered strong projects for this funding. For both grants and loans, is there a defined contract term period? So the grant term is 4 years. So grantees have up to 4 years to spend down their funds. And then loan terms, as we highlighted, are between 6 months and 3 years. Are there any specific projects that we're looking for, like new construction, rehab, or affordable housing? And we're not prioritizing any specific type of project. The funding decisions will be made based on the overall strength of the application.
Last slide.
Yeah. Are there any regional limitations, or is the program statewide? The program is not statewide. They must be within the Twin Cities and 7-county metro area. Can you apply for both grants and loans at the same time? Yes, you can. Apply for a grant and loan for the same project. Can you apply for multiple projects at the same time? You can, but you just need to make sure that each project has a separate application. And then final question, can the funds be used to pay for expenses already incurred? No, funding has to be for expenses undertaken within the period of the loan or the grant agreement.
Great. I think we'll have more questions, but really quickly here, even after this webinar, as you think about all this information and as you're compiling your applications, as I mentioned, feel free to reach out to any of us, myself, Kate, Arissa. Gretchen's also available for questions. We're trying to protect her time, but if any of you know her, want to call her directly, of course. Gretchen, I'm speaking for you, but I know you'll be happy to take questions as well. So yeah, let's maybe transition over to Q&A. So we have
Yeah, I can read off what's in the chat, Koa. I'll read off the questions that didn't get highlighted in the slides.
Awesome.
So one question here, is this an annual program? If so, are we able to apply again in the future solicitation periods?
Great question. No, unfortunately, this is a one-time program. This is a one-time appropriation. All the grants will, the decisions will be made this year, and then disbursements will happen on that funding, the $1.5 million. And the loans are also one-time because once they get repaid, it goes back to the state of Minnesota. However, those funds, the state will make a determination on what to do next with them if the program is considered successful, hopefully that they will invest that money and more money back into this emerging developers program. But that's TBD. So as of now, I would say it's a one-time opportunity.
I would just note too that if, we'll be tracking the success of this project, of this fund, and we'll be appealing to the legislators for re-upping more money to this purpose.
Yes. Thank you, Gretchen.
Thanks, guys. Next question. Is the 3 project limit of a certain size, or is that a blanket? And if a developer has done more than 3, are they no longer eligible for these funds?
I think that's sort of the what's the word I'm looking for? The criteria we're looking at. I think if you have developed more than 3 projects, then I don't know, then you don't qualify as an emerging developer. But you might want to check in with us one-on-one as well, if you have any follow-up on that. Gretchen, were you gonna add something?
Yeah, I just thought, I think I would refer to it as a rule of thumb.
Yeah.
And that we can, that leaves some space for how large a project is. I mean, it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a hard and fast.
Yeah. It's kind of like the guiding framework we're working with.
Thanks. So we've had a couple questions come in on what is considered a competitive or strong application.
Yes, so what I'll say to that is we are working on putting together some guidance on that, and we will put that on online early next week along with the FAQs. It'll be kind of like a general rubric of the different components that we will be looking at as we make assessments. Of course, all the eligibility criteria that we've already noted, the additional considerations, these are all going to be factors as we review applications. So, speaking to the strength of your project, speaking to funding that you might have received from other sources, speaking to any of the trainings that you've been part of, like all of those things will count towards the overall strength of your program. But it's a really good question. Well, we'll try to offer additional guidance um early next week as we kind of go over the questions from this week.
Thanks, Koa. Next question. Does a renovation for my personal house count as a development? I have rehabbed several existing houses, but never developed new construction.
Can you repeat that question, Marissa?
Yeah, so someone asked, does a renovation for my personal house count as development? And then they said, I have rehabbed existing houses, but never developed new construction.
Yep. I would say no to the renovation of your personal house. Or are you saying it's like is your prior history? I guess I'm not fully following the question. We have existing houses but never developed a new construction. So for like I think that question did come up before. Maybe I'll try to Ursa, you spoke to that in one of the FAQs, right? What counts as a development? And what we're looking at, I mean, if you just did a little bit of rental, you purchased a property and you did either just purchase it and it's part of a rental portfolio you own, or if you did just like light kitchen rental or something, then we won't count that. But if it's a significant rehab that you've undertaken, if you've, you know, converted uses, if you've you know, built a new construction, like those are what we are counting as developments. But so just a, you know, buying a property and operating it doesn't count, or buying in a light rehab, we won't count that.
I would just add, it's the intent of this fund is not to, you know, support people to renovate their own homes for their own personal benefit. It's to help support projects for the community. So that's the intent.
Thanks, Gretchen. Next question. To qualify for these funds, do you need to already be pre-approved for a property, or can you be looking to buy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We are not looking at, so maybe there are two parts to this. For the loan program, we really are going, since there's a higher bar, and Kate, you might want to jump in a little bit here as well, but since we are looking for projects that are, you know, quite advanced, for that program, we you know, we assume that by that point, when you're ready to apply for loan funding, that you do have the you have site control of a property. But for the grant program, the bar is lower, so we're not going to necessarily require site control of a property, but we do want to see a project that is more than just an idea that you have. How would you respond, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we said before is that although it's not technically a requirement, site control, you know, this is going to be really competitive. And so site control is going to be, well, it will make your application more competitive, especially for a larger funding request. So I think, you know, there may be room for a couple of early funding awards, kind of like, you know, more or upfront feasibility and technical support kind of assessment, but really only just a couple of those, and that might fall into that category. I think most of the grants are going to be much larger, and really for projects that have traction and that would have site control. So generally speaking, projects that have site control are going to be funded.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kate. The next question, what is the loan repayment structure? Is it monthly, and how much is the expected repayment?
Great question. So loans, we are expecting full repayment on the loans. And I think somebody right after that also asks the question of interest rate. So it's a 0% interest rate on the loans. So there will not be monthly payments. We are going to look for a balloon payment on the principal, but at the end of the term. And the term, as Arissa mentioned, can be somewhere between 6 months to 3 years. Typically, I think we're going to try to keep it under 2 years, but we could go up to 3 years if needed. And that's going to like be determined, I guess, by you know, what's happening with your project.
Yeah, well, I would just clarify, this is all pre-construction funding, so it actually gets repaid through the construction or permanent financing. So it's not part of the permanent financing stack, it all gets repaid prior to that.
Yeah.
So it's really not gap financing for the project, it's really meant to cover the pre-closing or pre-construction costs.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. So either like whatever comes first, if your project closes in financing, then the repayment happens then, or whatever the term of the loan is, that will become, if not, then that'll become the repayment term. And we can work with folks around that as we go forward. That's kind of how we'll set it up to begin with.
Okay, the next question, can this funding be used for tenant improvement and renovations? How about capital expenditures and building improvement?
Yeah, I think Kate answered that question already. This funding is for pre-development expenses. So no to capital expenses and construction related uses.
And then, can we stack this funding with other funding sources?
Yes, right, Kate? Yep.
Are there any requirements in using the grants, requirements such as requiring prevailing wages for construction, et cetera?
That is a really good question. As I recall from the contract with the state that we put together, I believe since we are going, I don't know, this is my first response, but we will clarify this in the follow-up notes, that I think since our grant amount is under 100,000, I don't think we are going to, I don't think it's gonna require prevailing wages. Again, I'll have to get back to you on that one. Let me confirm that and get back to you.
Someone has an example question in the chat. If you receive two good/sufficient projects, both requesting $50,000, and you are near the end of the capital pool, will you give each 25,000?
Are we thinking more loans or grants for this one? Grants, okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. If the ask is for 50,000, would we give less? I think it's possible we would. I don't know. We haven't really discussed this specific question. Kate, Gretchen, do you have thoughts? I think we'd be open to the idea if both projects are really strong and look good, but we haven't really figured that one out. We'll have to follow up on this. Again,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. Oh, I was just gonna read the next question, but did you have
Yeah,
something else?
no, read. I think it's helpful because not everyone can see the chat.
Sure. To qualify for a grant or new construction, do you have to have land in place?
Again, both grants and loans are for pre-development expenses, so the construction is not an eligible use for them. And again, but even for pre-development loans, we will be looking to see that you have site control or not, because I think by that point we're going to need to see that.
This is referring to a site that would need new construction. So I think you don't have to have site control, but it's more competitive if you do. I think fundamentally we're trying to make investments that are a likely success. So that's a very early stage and higher risk proposition if you don't have the site.
Okay, thanks, Gretchen.
Next question. Can applications be approved to projects that are in flight but not yet started?
Yeah, I don't know. As we said earlier, I think we might be able to do a few projects. Kate, were you gonna say something like projects not yet started.
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna suggest is, you know, a purchase agree, like a long purchase agreement. You don't have to necessarily own the land outright, but like a purchase agreement, an option. You know, there's other ways to get at this, would be helpful. You know, no site control whatsoever is gonna be difficult to get I think to get a big grant. So, yeah. That's just what I would say. I think it'll just be hard for the committee to, you know, just when you're competing against other, what we're anticipating coming in. So if you're coming in for a site assessment, a multi-site assessment, maybe we could do a couple of those, but I don't think we're gonna fund a lot of ideas without site control. I think it's gonna be hard.
Thanks, Kate.
The next question, could you please expound on the 75 to 80% funding requirement?
Yes, so this is for loans, for the loan program, as Kate mentioned, or as we've been saying before, being able to show success, part of like being able to show success for the loan program is that projects complete, that there is successful developments in our communities, that loans get repaid and go back to the state's emerging developers fund. And so we are kind of for qualifying for a loan through this program, we are setting a higher bar. And so that 75, again, this is, as Gretchen said, this is more kind of a guiding framework. It's not a hard and fast rule, but we're looking for projects that are kind of like coming close to being able to close on financing. And so that's roughly the threshold that we're looking at. This is not a requirement for grants, though. Kate, do you want to add a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, we're anticipating that the primary use of the loan will be architectural fees within that 6 to 12 month window prior to closing. The folks that testified at the legislature were, you know, one of the things in mind were low-income housing tax credit developers that have substantial, you know, $500,000 to $1 million pre-development costs in that window of 6 to 12 months prior to construction starting. So that's kind of what was in mind with this. So funding awards and commitments of subsidy would be one thing that would qualify for this. Also, term sheets or LOIs from investors and lenders. So it doesn't have to be hard commitments necessarily from a lender. A term sheet or LOI potentially could qualify. If it's a smaller project, we can talk about what that looks like in terms of a commitment. So I think this is something because this is going to be a rolling process and not competitive, like this is something we can definitely work with folks on and talk through at what point you're ready for a loan. So just reach out to one of us and we can get that conversation started.
Great, thanks, Kate. I think just, yeah, keep that as a kind of guideline. I mean, you might not hit that 75, 80% threshold, but maybe you have a really strong pipeline to commitments that are coming soon, in which case, you know, I think that we would take that into consideration as well. Yeah.
Those are all the questions that I see in the chat. If anyone has any more, feel free to drop them in.
Let's stop sharing here.
Where will the recording be shared? We will put the recording on the website.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to keep the questions coming in as you're thinking about your application. Appreciate all of you being here and engaging with us. Yeah, we're around for any questions you might have. Great. If there are no more questions, maybe we can give you all some time back.
I see one more question here. If you're new to property development, can you still apply?
Yeah.
Yes. Do professional fees include architectural, structural, civil? Yes, they do. How much support can we expect if we need step-by-step help with the application?
Definitely reach out to us and we'll do our best to support you as much as possible.
Do we get copies of the slides at COA?
Well, I wasn't planning to share the slides itself, but we'll definitely put up information that's new, that's not already in the website. So as I mentioned, the FAQs, we'll put those up, and then also just some kind of guiding frameworks for like putting together a strong application, just something like a rubric that you can look at. But everything that's on this slide is from the website.
Can you recap low-income areas and where those are identified in the metro?
Great. Yeah, we're going to put a link to a map that you can use to figure out whether your project is in an LMI census tract, but also to note that it's not a requirement. It's one factor of many. So if you have a great project that's not within a LMI area, it's not a disqualifier.
Do you have connections for construction funding?
Connection.
This goes with this, I think, along with this list of professionals we might use as a resource. Do we have, I know we had a resource guide for the DOC program. Might we dust that off and put that up as a resource?
That's a good idea. Let's do that.
Did I miss, there's a question about wanting more information about the 75 to 80% of the project needs to be funded.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yep. Yep. So that's just for the loans. So yes, so for the pre-development loans, we're gonna be only financing projects that are pretty much ready to go and that have, primarily, architectural or other pre-development costs that you need to get to closing on construction financing. But projects need to be roughly 75 to 80% funded. That is correct. And if you have more questions about that, feel free to call and we can kind of talk through what that means.
Okay. Can you apply for loans or grants if the project is a joint venture with an experienced developer or nonprofit?
Good question.
So I would say yes. We just want to make sure that the emerging developer is the majority partner. So you could be partners. Actually, I'm not so sure about the nonprofit, but definitely you could be working with another developer. I think I would say even a nonprofit as long as you have 50% or more of the ownership stake.
What would be the requirements for the eligibility for new construction?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Yeah, eligibility requirements are on the website. I don't think there's any specifically for new construction. I could be wrong though, Koa.
I'm not fully following, but for funding in this program, what the expenses we're looking to cover are for pre-development. I'm not sure if the new construction is, so we're not able to fund construction related expenses or make loans for the purpose of construction, but I'm sorry, I'm not sure if we're fully following though, or if we're missing your question.
I think it's the eligibility of the developer, isn't that right? It's, so anyone who fits the qualifications of what an emerging developers, the criteria that were listed on the slides, earlier slides.
Yeah, feel free to come off mute and explain if we're not getting your question.
Yes, thank you very much for the answers that you've provided. I was thinking like if you want to build in a low income community and you have a land, that what are the requirements for you to get a grant to be able to build that land, because you're like a new developer, you know. So that's my own. I wanted to know the requirements that one would need, you know, to be able to qualify for the grant, to be able to build those the properties around the low income area.
Like what type of project?
Like a single family home, you know,
Yep.
or like a multi-family homes, something like that.
Yep, any of those, yep, any of those. It's pretty open-ended, actually.
But you said you have to have a project on hand before you can get the grant. And
Yeah,
this is like an idea. This is like an idea.
Yeah.
And the time period is so short
Yeah,
for that idea to be in place,
yeah.
to become a project. Yeah.
I shouldn't say it's totally open-ended because there's actually many things that it wouldn't fund, but yeah, so housing, residential projects and, you know, affordable commercial or community projects as well. But yeah, that's right. It is going to be a tight turnaround if you don't already have a project and that you're kind of working on. So maybe, you know, maybe we should chat about that.
Yeah, sure. And then you said something about if you're like going for a training, like about how to do new construction or something like that, that qualifies you to be eligible for the grant as well, right?
That will give you, that I think that helps give you a leg up if you've been in a training program. Yep.
Okay, so being in a training program, that's good enough, but you don't have any project at the moment, you won't be able to qualify for that grant.
Right, that's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think this thing came so short of a time frame that you know, and it's a one-time opportunity. I wish this thing can be ongoing. It will bring a lot of people into it who needs help.
Yeah, agreed.
Definitely. Yeah, and hopefully, as Gretchen mentioned, as this program shows its success and, you know, as you all build out amazing projects, that the state and other funding agencies will continue to support this work and we'll have more opportunities in the future to fund programs. But definitely agree that it's very short timing in terms of turnaround. And also we really want to get the money out for developers to use. It's been a while since the funding was approved. Any other questions? I see one question from Air. Will we be notified via email when new information is updated on the website? We're gonna try to get it like early next week, so check back to the website. We're not sure who all is logging on this to this call, so it's gonna be a little hard for us to kind of email folks. But and always like call us, email if you have any questions. But early next week we'll definitely put something up for in terms of updated information.
There's a question about, is being in the real estate industry like a realtor qualify as the training product part? Sorry. As the training product part completed?
That's an interesting question. I think what was contemplated with that by the legislature was the programs like the ULI Ready program and the city's DTAP program and the Ramsey County's emerging developer training program and LISC's developer of color program. But I think having real estate experience and being a realtor actually does give you some experience. It demonstrates capacity on the application. So it's a little bit different, I think, than what was envisioned as as kind of the developer training. But I think it, definitely lists that on your application because I think it's useful, for sure, translatable in this. I see we missed a question from Matt that I think, Koa, are you able to answer that about the affordability on the single family homes?
Gretchen, what have we talked about yesterday on this question?
If it's a for sale affordable single family house, are the requirements for sale price and who can purchase? So the objective of this fund is to support affordability. And so the kind of cutoff for affordable ownership is 120% AMI for price point. So if that would make it a more competitive application if you were serving people at or below 120% AMI.
And can we provide a link to that information? I believe the Met Council, if you can like Google it and it is available on the Met Council's website. That amount and the annual income that would reach that you would have to certify that with.
We'll put the affordability criteria or levels on the website.
Yeah.
There's a question here. Who should we reach out to first to set up a one-on-one for questions for the application?
You could reach out to me or Kate or Ursa or Gretchen.
Why don't you reach out to Koa and then Koa, you triage?
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Reach out to me.
Yeah.
Then another question on, is this going to be a yearly program? As of now, no, it is not going to be a yearly program.
Yeah, I feel you.
Email, please. So there was a code. You maybe want to go back to the info slide. All of our emails are on that.
Yep, I can just type it in here as well. Oh, I'm not sharing anymore. I put mine in the chat box and then Kate and Marissa's is here too. Any other questions? Well, almost up here, coming up on time. So thank you all again for being with us on the call today, and stay in touch. Let us know how your applications are going and if there's somewhere we can be helpful. Any last comments from my team mates before we sign off here?
Not for me.
No, just a quick reminder that the application form, you can't go back and save it. So please be sure you have all your information at the point of it, putting it all together.
Great. Well, if Orissa, Gretchen, and Kate, if you guys can stay on for a couple of minutes, or maybe we can debrief on. But thank you. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and we'll be in touch. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
I
Thank you
Good luck.
thank you so much. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.